Love and Watches is a family-friendly podcast for male and female watch lovers alike. Perpetual Girl and Ranch Racer are a watch-crazy wife and husband team who've been wearing and collecting watches for more than 45 years. They enjoy bringing you the latest in collecting, interviews, news, and all things interesting in the world of watches. Enjoy the show.
Hey, Watch fam, this is Ranch Racer.
And this is Perpetual Girl.
And you guys are listening to the Love and Watches podcast, the podcast for all watch lovers. We got a fun show for you guys today. We're going to talk about, the main topic is something that you guys seem to really like. And I think if I go back and look at our stats, the What's in the Collection episodes tend to get the most, the most listens. So this will be, I think, the fourth What's in the Collection. As most of you know, we got, between the two of us, we got a pretty good size collection ranging from Timex up to Rolex and some other stuff. And you guys seem to enjoy it when we go through and, tell you about 3 or 4 different watches in the collection. So that's the main topic. But PG, you had some other stuff that you wanted to cover. I think there's a shout out in there somewhere. We've got, we normally don't do news, as you guys know, but there are a couple things that are pertinent to the podcast that we're going to cover. But I think you wanted to start out with something we haven't done for a while, right?
Yeah, I'd like to do a listener review, and we're
going to give stuff away.
We're really happy and we're honored that we have such great listeners, and we're very proud that our rating is 5.0, and I think all of them are positive. And we don't, if we get negative, that's fine.
We'll read them.
We can work on it. It's a process, so we want to improve and do a podcast that everybody likes. So we love the reviews, but I'm really, really proud that they're all positive.
Yeah.
Which is great. So
definitely makes us, it's a good ego boost. It makes us feel good.
In 2020. Yeah. Normally we don't care about ego
this
boosts.
Year.
Oh dear. Okay.
And you guys know, we've said before, if we read your review, you just need to contact us and you're going to get some free stuff. So go for it. Let's hear this one.
Well,
Who's this from?
I'm gonna do a review and then I'll do a shout out. So I'll start with my review if I can get my iPad to work here. Oh dear. Okay. This is from JD the Traveling Watch. The title is Relaxing, Authentic, and Interesting. When you first listen to Love and Watches, you will notice that Ranch Racer and Perpetual Girl don't have the typical super excited delivery that you might hear from other posts. This is more like sitting down and having coffee with them, and you just happen to be talking about watches. RR and PG make sure that everyone is welcome. There is no shaming of certain brands, nor do they make you feel like there is a certain status bar that you must pass to enter. Rolex and Timex are both accepted equally. Whether it is a show with a theme or one of their many guests, there is quite a bit of information shared with the listener. They don't read through the latest press releases and industry news. They actually discuss watches that appeal to them. As you can see by the 5 stars, they are highly recommended. And gosh, that is the nicest thing.
Thank you, JD.
That someone could say. JD.
Very, very nice review.
So I'm going to look for you on Instagram, and we're going to send you some fun stuff.
And you can also just email us at admin@loveandwatches.com and let us know that we read your review and give us the username, and we'll get you some fun stuff.
Yeah, so you can also DM Perpetual Girl.
Yep.
Or Love and Watches.
Yeah, on Instagram. And that's, I love reviews like that because what JD said, that's exactly what we've always been shooting for, right? We don't, and the funny thing is we're actually going to cover a little bit of news today. But again, it's news that's very pertinent to the podcast because it has to do with some very recent guests that we've had on. But, there's so many blogs and podcasts that regurgitate the same news over and over. I mean, if you go to the Watchfail app and something big releases,
oh yeah, that's what I do.
It's just one after another, right? That's how we get a lot of our news if we're not on the press release list for a certain brand, and some of them were not. The bigger brands were not on their list, but so we don't normally do that, and we really do like to it's just conversational. It's how this started. So I love hearing reviews like that because it's exactly what we're shooting for with this thing.
And there's so many fantastic, very high-end couture pieces out there that we love, and there are grails, but we tend to not review something that's out of our budget too.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of the flavor of our podcast, is that we try to stick with things that we can afford ourselves. Mm-hmm. So it kind of narrows. There's so many watches. Like I always say, so many watches, so little time. So we can't possibly cover everything. So I think keeping it in our budget, and we have listeners that are in the budget too. So if you stay within your budget, it's easier to collect. And I think last count, I think my collection alone was over 150 pieces.
That's ridiculous.
But most of them are not expensive. They're budget. No. But
well, and just along that same theme, a couple of my watches I'm going to talk about today for what's in the collection are very, very similar looking and feeling, but way different in price, right? So it's going to demonstrate that we really try to cover everything. So whether your budget is, $100 or $50 for a Timex or a Seiko or Casio or something, or you collect, higher end, whether it might be Oris or Rolex or Cartier or whatever, we try to cover everything, right? Everyone's in different positions, and we like it all, as we've said many times. So it should be a fun show today. You want to do a shout out as well.
I do.
Which I think this one's really cool. You pointed this out to me and played it for me, and I just thought it was amazing.
I did. This is a shout out to Watchdog Podcast, a brand new podcast, and the person who does the podcast is a professional dog walker / runner. And he did a show on collection size. What constitute a collection size? Does 2 watches or does 200 watches make a collection? So he actually reached out to the watch community, various people, and I was one of them, which I was very honored, and did a really quick reply. Not really quick. It was actually, I filled up the whole allotted number of characters. You don't do anything really quick. But I responded back, and he read it on air, and he said some really nice things about us. And he's very kind, and it really comes across in his podcast. So if you want to hear a really down to earth, and I didn't hear any swear words either. So it's something you can listen to with your kids, and just a really, really nice guy. And he's a collector.
Now, I think he's kind of similar format to us, where he doesn't recover a lot of the same news, right, that everyone else is covering. I haven't really listened. I listened to that one show, and I'm really need to go.
I'm really behind on my listening.
I don't listen to any watch podcasts anymore. It's terrible, but I should
go
check it out because we're giving the guy a shout out. So I really should go check out his podcast.
Well, you did listen to it with me that day,
and it was awesome. I mean, he's got a good voice, and he's very clear and concise, and
very sweet. He sounds very nice.
Yeah, sounds like a cool guy. So definitely go check out his podcast for sure. That's the Watchdog podcast.
It's not. There's no snobbery. It's not pretentious.
No watch shaming. That's one of our big things. Cool.
All right.
Cool.
So I'll contact him and send him a little something too.
Oh, awesome. All right, cool. Let's roll into the news. And I mean, they're both news topics, but again, they're very related to the podcast and things that we've talked about. So, which you want to cover one of these and I'll cover the other?
We can share. Let's share.
Okay.
The 2 manufacturers we're talking about, we've had on our show
recently.
So the first one is Formex watches. We had Marcus and Raphael on, and we talked about their Essence line, which is just a stunning watch. It was a little bit too big for me, although they said that women do wear it, but not quite a look I've gotten into yet is wearing a watch that's that big for me.
Right.
But you wore it, and I was able to enjoy it looking at, there's a difference between looking at your own watch and seeing a watch on somebody across the room or even 5-10 feet away. Completely different experience. So you would walk by with this watch, and I was just blown away at the way the bezel and the angles caught the light. So they have a new model called the Reef
that they introduced yesterday, right? I think on the 14th of October. So it's called the Reef, which you'd probably guess is a dive watch, 42 millimeters. It's the typical incredible Formex quality. I was telling someone, I think it was on our local Red Bar group, that when I look at a Formex under a loop, I feel like I'm looking at something like a Grand Seiko. That's how good their detail is. All their fine detail, the edges, the polishing. And we talked about that with them on the podcast, and as well as the review of the Essence. But really good looking diver, 42 millimeter, all ceramic bezel, bunch of different sunray dial colors, blue, gray, green.
It's the ways to choose you can choose your own
you
colors.
Build it basically.
Yeah, so there's a tool.
You choose your bezel color, choose your dial color, and as is the norm for Formex, you've got the technology. So this one doesn't have the suspended case that you see in an Essence, but what you do get is a new patented quick release system to change out the bracelet or the strap, and you get a patented quick adjust, micro adjust on the stainless steel, and I think you also get it on you get their adjustment on the band as well. But just it's a great looking piece. I mean, I really, you guys already know I'm a big fan of this brand. Yeah, it does have a quick release on the strap.
I love a quick release. I mean, and I don't see why more people don't do it, because we also have it on the Hampton Nanook. That has a
quick release or a quick adjust?
Quick adjust.
Micro adjust, yeah.
On the bracelet that you can adjust while you're wearing the watch. So when I wear that watch, I adjust it all day long, depending on what I'm doing.
Now, I also really like the quick release, right? So being able to change straps and bracelets without a spring bar tool. The only thing that I would like to see that we'll probably never see is I'd love to see an industry standard, because when you have a quick release, it's whatever that manufacturer designs, right? They're all going to be different. So you can still use a standard, I think for most of these, you can still use a standard spring bar with any kind of strap that you want. It would be nice to see some sort of an industry standard quick release, so you could swap more bracelets and straps with a quick release to different watches. We're probably never going to see that. I mean, the industry coming together as a whole to develop some sort of a standard quick release, we're probably not going to see it. And
now, are you talking about a quick release or a proprietary clip system like the Cartier Santos?
So,
like the Santos is a plastic.
That's what I'm referring
system,
to,
which
right?
Worries me, because I've actually had it.
It's come off.
Successfully deploy, which is bad. It fell off, and luckily it hit something that wasn't, like concrete. But I really love the push-pull spring bars, like on a Barton strap. A lot of people are moving to that. So which one are you referring to?
It's both, right? Okay. So it's pretty easy to do with some sort of a textile type strap, leather or any kind of a soft strap. It's basically just a spring bar that lives in there with a little cut on the back of the strap and a little, tube or handle that comes out, so you can squeeze the spring bar without a tool. So that's pretty easy. Where it gets harder is with bracelets and stuff. Most of them are still proprietary. There are some reasons for that, right? The bracelet has to fit the case nicely, unless you're doing like some sort of a shark mesh or something like that.
Yeah, like the Alexander Venacci has probably one of my favorite bracelets in my collection. It's Milanese. So that I wear, it's super easy peasy to use. And I use it on so many different watches at that width.
Yep. So we probably won't ever see an industry standard. They'll continue to be proprietary. Formex has done a phenomenal job. And I love the way they design this stuff. It works really well. It's secure. I can't wait to get my hands on this one, because I want to see how they've done this, but it looks really, really cool. You mentioned Cartier. That one was, I think what Cartier did was they made up for all the research and development costs by charging a fortune for the bands, right? Like $400 or $500 for a leather strap.
Yeah.
And you really don't see them anymore. I think they just didn't have a lot of takers, so you don't really see much of them anymore.
In certain colors, our Santos that I wear primarily is the men's medium. And I snagged the raspberry pink
which you
strap.
Can't find anymore.
As soon as I bought it, we ordered that from Christine. Yeah. And now I went back to there's like a grayish purple, and I don't think they have any left, because I don't think a lot of men are going to buy a lavender or a pink strap. So
probably not.
Glad I got it when I did, but now I'm kind of bummed I didn't get more. But still, $400 for a strap.
Yeah.
So I'm limited to brown, pink, black, and the bracelet. So
yep.
Really, that's all I need.
So anyway, back to the Formex release, the Reef. No, this is all good stuff, but it's a 42 millimeter, only 11.4 millimeters thick, that's again, if you go back and watch my video I did a couple years ago on sizing, it's not necessarily always the diameter that makes the difference. It's all the design features, right? And thickness is one of those big ones. If it's thin, it's able to hug your wrist better. And this is, for a diver, this is pretty thin at 11.4.
I can't wait to try that on, because if it's that thin, that changes everything as far as case diameter. And
the lug to lug is only 47, right? It's from tip of the lug to tip of the lug is only 47 millimeters. So I think you'll probably be able to, anyone with a smaller wrist will be able to pull this one off. And it's a diver. Divers tend to be bigger and chunkier anyway, right? Yep. You need to be able to manipulate it with a glove on your hand when you're diving. You need to be able to see it. It needs to be very easy to read. So they tend to be larger anyway. The Oris that you have is smaller, and that's not typical dive watch size, right? This is more typical. I think it's going to work for a lot of people. Like I said, I'm looking forward to getting it in and checking it out. It's got the COSC certified SW300 Sellita movement, so that's the top grade Sellita movement. Looks like it's got great loom, which I would always expect from these guys. So great looking piece. Definitely go check it out. We'll put some photos up on the website, but go check out formexwatch.com to get a look at it. Really neat watch.
The retail price is?
The retail price, I think, with the bracelet is just under $1,800. So a COSC certified Sellita powered 11.5 millimeter thick diver for under $1,800. That's pretty much a price performer.
And the design is beautiful. Some people don't like the left side mimicking the crown guard to sort of make it symmetrical, but I really like the way that looks. I think it gives it more of a rectangular look overall. Mm-hmm. I like the design.
Oh, I do too. Yep, and I like the rubber strap. It's I think the style is kind of a tropics, where it's got like all the little pyramids on it, right? The little miniature pyramids or whatever that design is called.
We never claim to know everything.
Yeah, I don't know much of the stuff, but anyway, it looks good on that as well. And rubber is absolutely acceptable for diving. I wouldn't expect it to come on a leather strap.
Did you dive when you were diving?
Yeah, my Casio, my Arnie had a black rubber strap. I mean, that's pretty much what they all had back then, except for like a Rolex or something.
With the extra area that popped open, so you could put it over your.
Well, no, with the rubber, you've got all the holes, so you can fasten it wherever you want. It's when you have the metal bracelet that you have the diver's extension to get over the wetsuit.
It's nice to have a diver in the podcast, because I'm a snorkeler. I've snorkeled since I was 5, and we don't have to worry about wearing watches to time our oxygen. So it's a very different.
It is. I miss it. And
when
I was diving, you didn't have the fancy dive computers and stuff that you have today that figured all your dive times. I had to use my watch, and that was before unidirectional bezels. My bezel was bidirectional, and very, very different times when I was diving.
And that was a quartz, correct?
Yeah, it was quartz powered, and so I had a stopwatch I could use. I had the bezel that had it was a directional bezel as well as a timing bezel. So that was before the ISO 6425, I think, is the standard for dive watches. But I think this is going to be another big success. So it's on pre-order on their website. It's $1,719 with the bracelet, and $1,670 if you want the rubber strap. And I would imagine you can probably order both of those if you want. The other thing I like is that they ask you for your wrist size. So you're going to get a rubber strap that's customized to your wrist size. So the tail will be the right size, which is fantastic. Everyone should do that. Yeah.
Bravo for them.
Yeah. Good job, guys. Really nice watch, and we're looking forward to getting our hands on it soon. So that was the one piece
Formex.
of news. The next piece of news you guys have probably all seen, because I'm sure it's been on all the big blogs. It was kind of the big announcement this morning, which is Oris. If you guys remember when we had VJ and Beth on a few weeks ago, VJ mentioned that this year was going to be kind of a big game-changing year for Oris, and they were going to have some big announcements, and this is one of those announcements. And it is the brand new Oris Calibre 400 movement.
in-house manufacture.
Yep. And that's not new to Oris. They've got some other in-house movements. This one's got some technology that's new to Oris, not necessarily groundbreaking in terms of the industry itself, but new to Oris. And it also has some features that come with this movement that really are groundbreaking and big news. So do you want to talk about some of those features? You want me to go through them, PG?
Why don't you just keep rolling along? I know the power reserve is 10 days because there's
5 days.
I'm sorry, 5 days because
5
there's
days.
2.5 day barrels.
Yeah, so it's got twin main barrels, right? So for those of you that are kind of new to watches, within the watch movement, you've got the mainspring, which is what houses all the energy that powers the movement for however long that spring lasts. One way to get longer runtime out of a watch is to run 2 main barrels in serial. So they just give you more time, basically, right? As one barrel runs out, the next one is taking over, and they run in a serial fashion. And so they've done a twin barrel design, and that gets you 5 days of power reserve. So that's number one. Again, neither of these are like industry. They're not new to the industry, but they're new to Oris. And when we talk about some of the last couple things, that's really when it kind of hits home how important this movement is. So first, you've got the twin barrels,
which would actually, I can probably see why it isn't used, largely, because it's probably, the technology is probably expensive, I imagine, and it's probably a little larger.
Yeah, it is, and that's something I was going to talk about, but I'll talk about it right now. That's a good point in that when you do a twin barrel, don't expect to see this movement in, like sub 40 millimeter watches, maybe not even sub 42 millimeter, because when you're having to do 2 barrels, you're taking up more space for those mainspring barrels. Right now, they can stack them, they can make it thicker. There's ways to kind of minimize that, but I don't think we're going to see this in real small watches. It'll probably be either 40 and up or 42 and up. So don't expect it in really small watches. But a couple of the other things that they've done, so normally on an automatic watch, we've got the rotor that spins on the back, right? So if you have a case back that's see-through, you can see that rotor. Sometimes you can even feel it on your wrist. Some watches feel alive. Like
the Speedmaster, the coaxial drive.
Yeah, the coaxial Speedmasters, your 38s that you have, both of those things just feel alive on your wrist.
They keep moving after you stop, and they kind of talk to you.
It almost feels like it shakes your wrist a little bit.
It does. Yeah. It does. I love the Speedmaster.
The Hamilton face-to-face that I have that has the Valjoux 7750 movement, same thing. That thing it moves. You can feel it and hear it. What they've done with this, normally you've got a ball bearing, and that ball bearing can, I guess, wear down over time, right? Which requires servicing and lubing and all that stuff. Well, what they've done is I think it's actually a patented system. So instead of winding in both directions, they've eliminated the ball bearing and done some sort of a sleeve and tube. And until I actually get to see it, it's going to be hard to fully understand how it works. But it only winds in one direction, but it lasts a lot longer. And that's something I'm going to talk about in just a second. So that's the second thing is it's got this proprietary automatic winding. It's a bearing, but it's not a ball bearing. So that's the second thing. Third thing that they talk about is that it's highly resistant to magnetism. So,
like a Milgauss.
Right. So the whole magnetism thing, Rolex with their Milgauss is really well known for that. Right. So a lot of engineers, folks that were working around magnetic fields in the nuclear fields or whatever back in the 50s and 60s, they needed a watch that if you expose a watch to high magnetism, it can affect things like the mainspring, right? Because it can squeeze it. It can affect the escapement, parts of the escapement.
And we're talking like a stereo speaker even.
Oh yeah, like a big magnet on the stereo speaker can affect it. So what Rolex did with the Milgauss originally is they built it in kind of like a Faraday cage, right? There's a couple different ways you can...
Can you explain what that means so people...
Yeah, so if you encase a movement inside of some sort of an anti-magnetic shielded case, right, within the main outer case. That's what they did with the Milgauss originally. Now, what that does is it makes the whole watch thicker, right? Because you kind of have a case within a case. The other way to do it, which is what the industry's been doing for many years now, is you use anti-magnetic materials for the mainspring and for the hairspring and, you know, the different pieces of the escapement. And so that's what they've done with this. They've used some of those types of anti-magnetic type materials in the escapement and in the springs. And if you think about the Milgauss, which basically is able to withstand 1,000 Gauss, right? Gauss is a measure of magnetic fields. In the most current ISO standard, which is ISO 764, that defines anti-magnetism for watches, it's equivalent. The testing is equivalent to about 2,200 Gauss, and the watch has to remain within plus or minus 30 seconds of what it was before it was exposed to that magnetic field. And in their testing, they were within 10 seconds of that original timing. So they've done a good job with the anti-magnetism. Again, not a huge groundbreaking thing in the industry. Lots of, Omega can do 15,000 Gauss, right? So
yeah. But with the thickness of that case being such, you know, so short, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I don't think the movement, and again, I'm still waiting for some of the actual specs on the movement. I don't think it's super thick though, so it should be in some nice thin watches, and we'll see. So we've talked about, I talked about the proprietary bearing system on the rotor, right? And I talked about the magnetism. I talked about the twin barrels. That's usually going to be pretty expensive stuff. So number one, if you look at Oris's current in-house movements, I think it started with the 110, then 111, 12, 13. I think there's a 114, usually up well above $5,000. I expect this will be less. We don't know prices yet. I suspect it's going to be pretty affordable, but where the rubber really hits the road on this is because of some of these technologies that they've used, their recommended service interval is 10 years.
It's amazing.
It really is, because most watches are 2 to 5 years recommended service intervals. And, you know, our collection's grown so much in the last 3 years, we're probably going to have to sell the house to
I know. I was thinking about that
our
too.
Watches.
Thinking about that too.
And we will. We'll live on the street as long as we can keep our watches. We'll sell the house and service all of our watches.
You can live on the street. I will live in the goose barn.
There you go. You can live with the geese.
But back to the movement.
But 10 years.
Yeah,
I mean,
that was announced today.
Yeah.
Along with that is a 10-year warranty.
Yeah, it's double what anyone else in the industry, I believe, offers today. So you're getting an in-house movement, which I suspect is going to be affordable or relatively affordable for in-house movements go. And you're getting a 10-year service interval and a 10-year warranty with it. That's pretty amazing. Pretty incredible. So I think like the big guys like Rolex and Omega are 5 years. I don't think there's anyone else out there that does a 10-year warranty. I could be wrong. And if I am, let us know in the comments. But this is pretty groundbreaking.
What was your Bashir chronograph Oris?
The warranty?
We've had it at least a couple of years now.
Yeah, well, it's probably kind of the standard 5-year service interval, but I think it's a three-year warranty. Mm-hmm. So,
which is still good.
It is, and that's not an in-house movement. That's the SW500, I think, chronograph movement from Sellita. But to get an in-house movement with a 5-day power reserve, high anti-magnetism, some technology that extends the maintenance life of the rotor, with a 10-year warranty and a 10-year service interval that's the groundbreaking stuff. So that's when VJ was saying it was going to be a groundbreaking year for Oris, he really meant it. I mean, I cannot wait to see this movement. It really is amazing.
Yeah, they have confidence in the quality and performance of that movement that they're willing to put their stamp on a 10-year promise.
Yeah.
That's pretty incredible. So,
yep. No, I can't wait to see their watch release with this thing. And I'm sure we're going to see it in a lot of different watches, right? This is kind of going to be their new in-house movement going forward. One thing I did want to cover before we move on to the what's in the collection stuff is there's probably a lot of folks listening to the podcast that are thinking, what in the world is an in-house? What does that mean, right? What does in-house movement mean?
That's a really good segue, because that term is something we have a lot of, since July, I think my Instagram account has grown by about 2,000 new watch collectors saying I'm new to watches. And as a novice, there are certain things that you really need to understand what it means so that you can discern between, the choice of your watch, whether or not you are spending, $500 or $250 versus $1,500 or $2,000 on a watch based on the movement. So this is actually a topic I've really wanted to talk about for a long time.
Oh, okay. Well, great. Then that coincides well with what I'm about to say. So back in the day, right? So back when PG and RR were young and, before fire and the wheel were invented, watchmakers, and I'm really referring just to the Swiss watch industry at this point, although it also applied to the American watch industry when we did have a watch industry here in the United States.
For sure.
But in the Swiss watch industry, if you wanted to be a watch manufacturer, normally what you would do is you would design your watch, and then you had all these little cottage industries within Switzerland. Some of them built movements or pieces of movements, like gears. They specialized in watch movement gears. They specialized in springs or cases or dials or hand making or the bracelets or whatever, right? The manufacturers didn't really make much of this stuff on their own. They designed it and then had it built by others and then sourced it. So when you had a movement, you would get what's called an ebosh, which is a term that the watch industry hijacked from the art industry or the art world, which is basically the beginnings of something that comes together as a whole, right? So you'd order an ebosh, which is a box full of parts, and then you'd assemble the movement from all those parts from all those different little cottage industries. You'd put the dial on it, and then you'd slap it in the case, test it, and you've got your watch, right? Yeah.
That concept is so prevalent in many industries. When I worked for the airline and aircraft maintenance for 10 years, we had entire companies. We had companies that they made one bearing, and that was their sole product. They made one bearing that they sold to airlines. So you have an industry that has an entire company that's putting all their effort into one little part. So, whether it's a mainspring or gears or, whatever back in the day. So it's fascinating.
It's not uncommon. So where does this whole in-house thing? Because if you've gotten into the watch collecting world in the last few years, you hear the term in-house and it's this, is that an in-house movement, right? And sometimes if you have a watch that doesn't have a quote in-house movement, it's looked down on as something inferior, which is ridiculous. It's not the case at all. How did this all start? Well, where I think what really was the catalyst for the whole in-house movement thing that we see today was ETA. So ETA was a movement manufacturer that provided ebosh movements to other manufacturers. Well, it became part of the group that eventually became known as the Swatch Group in the late 90s. And what happened was in the early 2000s, Nick Hayek, who was the CEO of the Swatch Group, he came out and said, okay, we're going to stop supplying ebosh movements of our ETA product to other manufacturers that are not under the Swatch Group umbrella. So if you weren't like an Omega or some other group that fell under the Swatch Group umbrella, you were not going to get ETA movements. So there was obviously a big panic, right? Because so many manufacturers were using ETA eboshes to make their watches. So there was a big investigation, and long story short, Swatch Group was forced by the Swiss authorities to continue to supply these ETA movements to manufacturers, but eventually they were allowed to start scaling down to the point where I think in 2018, 2019, they were supplying about 70% less than what they had been supplying before this all started. So this sparked a couple things. Number one, it sparked Sellita, a new manufacturer to pop up who basically used the exact same prints because the ETA was not patented anymore. So they used all the same original drawings and designs to build a new movement. So if you look at like the Sellita SW200, that's a ETA 2824, same movement, right? So that's the first thing. And the second thing is a lot of these manufacturers started thinking, oh boy, we're going to need to start making our own movements. So you started seeing manufacturers making their own movements, and it started with the big ones and then moved down, kind of gradually down to a lot of the smaller ones. So when you hear in-house movement, that's really where all that started. Doesn't necessarily mean it's any better than an ETA or a Sellita or even a Seiko or a Miyota movement. It just means it's built by the manufacturer for their watches. That's all that means. So, and it's usually quite a bit more expensive because they have to take on all those costs to design and develop it, right? And then make those costs up. So,
and they're used in so many watches. We have micro brands that we've purchased that have the Sellita and the what's the other one? Is it STP?
STP is owned by Fossil, so that's another one. Yeah, and it, someone was asking me a few days ago, hey, is Sellita any good? And the answer is it's as good as ETA or better. What it really comes down to is whoever buys that movement, it's all about the final lubrication and casing and timing of the movement as to how good it is. So you can have a micro brand with a Sellita that's within, a few seconds a day. Then you can have a bigger brand with a Sellita that they don't take a lot of time to time it or whatever it takes to really make it accurate. And it could be 20 seconds a day. So it just depends. It very much depends.
I've got that case with some of mine as well, where, if you're gonna use an STP or an off the shelf movement, don't price it like it's been adjusted and really, really babied and doted over. And then there's the Seiko NH35. That's personally
fantastic movement.
That's one of my favorites because I have what we've talked about Crazy Snoopy on the podcast before, but I have I love Snoopy. I think everyone knows that. I have an Invicta Red Dive Homage Snoopy that has an NH35 in it. The last time I timed it, what was it, about maybe 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
I wound it
within a second.
Put it down.
Right?
I don't even remember. I think I stuck it up on the top of the couch. Yeah. It's accurate within less than 1 second in 24 hours.
It's more accurate than any of our Rolex watches.
How did that happen? How did that happen? Luck. I think it's actually more accurate than my Oyster Perpetual. So I don't know if I demagnetized that somehow, getting too close to the television, the speakers there.
Probably we can demagnetize it.
But and you can talk about that too. But yeah, so you've got. I think it's something to be aware of when you're talking about an in-house movement that's taken time, innovation, engineering, and a lot of hard work to develop in-house, pricing that accordingly, versus having an off-the-shelf movement that most, when you get these Seiko NH35 or the Swiss off-the-shelf, someone will decorate a rotor, do some machine decorations on parts of the back of the movement,
and they'll name it something else, right?
Well, that's another topic that I don't like.
And some manufacturers do that. A lot of them do it.
Some will give it their own name, but it's really a mod. It's got some.
And they
changes.
won't tell you what the base move. I like to at least be told what the base movement is, even if they want to put their own model number out. But it's a very commonly used practice throughout the industry.
Yep. From
small to big manufacturers. So.
Right. So as a new collector, people.
Just be aware.
Out there, just know that and do the research and find out exactly what you're getting, so that you know what you should kind of be paying for it. There's other things to consider, materials of your dial and all the complications, but
and if someone tells you, well, because your watch doesn't have an in-house movement, it's not as good, it's not as high quality, they don't know what they're talking about. Yeah. They're drinking the social media Kool-Aid and what everyone says, right? Oh, that must be true. It's not true at all. Not true at all. We have amazing watches from Seiko that have fantastic movements that are sold to all the micro brands, right? So many micro brands use Seiko and Miyota movements, as well as Sellita and STP. STP did have some issues with some of their runs where they weren't lubed enough, and that caused something called helicoptering of the rotor, where when you went to manually wind it, the rotor would spin. That's a big no-no. That means it doesn't have enough lubrication. So there were some issues. It's not that it's a bad movement. It's that they had some production problems with some of those runs. I think they've mostly gotten through those. But at the end of the day, an in-house movement is no better or worse than an off-the-shelf ETA or Sellita or Seiko or anything else.
And bottom line is, with an off-the-shelf movement, it's a lot more likely. It's likely that your local watchmaker will be able to work on that for you in the future.
It'll be way less disservice.
Absolutely. Yeah. And easier for you overall. So, as a collector, some people would rather have more watches and spend less. It's buy what you love.
Now, one thing I'll say is when we're talking about this whole thing, we're not talking about $100,000 Pateks that have handmade movements that are, that's a whole different class. But what we're talking about is more the kind of the everyday, collector, what you can get on the market. And just understand that there's a lot of fluff out there and a lot of keyboard opinions, I'd like to call them, where they really don't have any idea. They haven't researched it. They have just read and heard that in-house is better than off the shelf. So they'll tell you your off the shelf watch isn't as good as one with an in-house movement. It's just simply not true. Not true. So anyway, that was a bit of a divergence, but I did want to cover that. And I think I have said all I'm going to say on that. So should we move into our, we're going to do a wrist check, and that's going to kind of be our first. And then we each have 3 others that we're going to go through. So you want to kick off the wrist check?
Sure. I'm wearing, since it's the day of the Oris movement release, I'm wearing the Oris Aquis that I think I was wearing last podcast, but that's because of, today was a big day, and I do find that I'm wearing this a lot, and it's the Oris Aquis 30. Oh dear. I'm sorry, my chemo brain is getting
37, right?
Yeah, I just want to get you. I have my.
She's busting the calipers out, guys and gals.
I need to do this carefully here.
Don't want to scratch it.
It is a 36 millimeter case, just a hair over 36. Ceramic white bezel.
I think it was your wrist check on the last.
It was.
One,
Sorry,
right?
folks. We do have new listeners.
We do.
It has a integrated bracelet, which I normally am not a fan of that.
Okay, what does that mean, PG?
It means the lugs and where your spring bars attach are not standard to, you can't go out and buy an everyday band with a spring bar. It's got a different shape. So it's...
basically have to use the Oris stuff.
This. I want to check and see if this version that has the rubber summer strap, the white one, I want to see if that would fit this. I think it will.
It should, yeah. It's the same case.
Although with what I do around here on the farm, it would probably not stay very clean. But
yeah, white is tough.
So that's something to think about, because that basically restricts you. But this bracelet is so beautiful. It's got sort of an oyster look to it, to me. And I have some watches that are really large, and I have one that I'm going to share with you today. It's a big one. But this, I love looking at this. It's got like a candy type feel to this white ceramic bezel. And the one that they make exactly like this in black is equally beautiful because of that gloss and the sheen. And the lume on it is the new
BGW9.
I'm sorry, BGW9.
It's the blue lume.
And
it glows blue.
It's white during the day and blue at night. And I posted a lume shot of it this morning. And I'm so impressed with the lume they use. And it must be multiple layers, because I can charge this with my tactical flashlight. I can go to sleep at 9 o'clock.
Guys, I got to tell you, that's just so cool when your wife says tactical flashlight. That's just really, really cool.
I'm a tactical girl. So I charge the watch. I go to sleep at 9. And if I wake up at 2, 3, 4 o'clock, it still glows, and I can still read it without my glasses. And I only see in one eye. So that is something right there. If you have vision issues, I highly recommend the newer Oris lume. So this also has an exhibition case back, so you can see that famous red rotor. So it's really a fun piece, because you can, I've shown people my watches before, and they'd never seen a mechanical movement. So it's really fun to have that. I really like that. So is there anything else I need to say about this one? I also really like the crown guard with the screws. So yes. It has a really nice look from the top, and I really enjoy a smaller watch sometimes, because you can see more of the bracelet. A large watch that goes from the edge of the top of your wrist to the bottom, you don't really always get a great look from the top. So I really like that about this watch. And the bezel is very easy to turn as well. So it's
Cool.
very user friendly, has the date, and that's also easy to read. So that's my Aquis.
One thing I will say that I thought was interesting, sorry, I'm going back to our news item, but on the new Calibre 400 movement, the rotor's not red.
I noticed that. And did you notice that the overall shape with the two barrels and the rotor and the jewels look like a bear's face?
It does. Yes. Now, I don't know if
love
that's on
it.
purpose, but the
And that's
barrels
just
do
so-
look like the ears of the Oris bears.
I sound like such an expert. It looks like a bear.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Let's just let's move on from that one. But I thought that was interesting. Now, I have not seen their other in-house movements. Maybe they only use the red on the movements that have a base of like a Salida base. And then maybe their 110 and their other in-house movements don't have a colored rotor. I don't know. I'm not an expert on their movements.
How about your
so-
Brashear? Is that a solid case back?
Solid case. And that's a Salida movement, so it probably does not have, they're not going to spend the money on a red rotor.
Well, this is a Salida. This
Anyway.
is the SW200 movement.
Right, the base movement for that guy is the Salida SW200.
However, on the website, it's called the Oris 733. And I believe
Right.
it's the same movement that's used in the 43 millimeter. Is it 43?
Should be the
white?
same exact movement, yeah.
Yeah, so they make a, I hate to say women and men because it's really not.
Small and large.
It's a small and large, has the same movement. So they crammed that movement into this 36 millimeter
Yep.
case.
Well, and
but,
it's got the red rotor, right?
It does.
And that's my point, is maybe on the ones that are not in-house, they're based on off the shelf. Maybe they put the red rotor on there to identify it as an Oris modified rotor, whereas with the in-house stuff, maybe all of them don't have the colored rotor. I don't know.
Well,
I'll have to look at that.
This movement actually does have 733 engraved into the movement if you look at it with a loop.
Yep.
So they named
Very nice watch.
it. I love it, and it was such a great story
Yeah, it
of
was
how
fun
you
how we
surprised
got
me
that.
because you're not good at. I usually find things out.
Go back and listen to the Oris episode, guys, if you want to know how that all came to be. Okay, so I'm going to go on to my first, which has nothing to do with either of the news items for today. It's a watch that I still wear it pretty frequently. And the funny thing about this, so this is the Seiko SRPC 44 Prospects. So it's their turtle-shaped, all-gold diver.
Also known as C3PO.
C3PO or the Golden Turtle. I've seen both. But when this first came out, you really dug it.
Oh, I was like,
And you were trying to get me to buy it.
Have to wear this. It's so 70s.
And I just
hunky.
wasn't, number one, I wasn't 100% sure on the all gold. Number two, it came with a rubber strap, and I'm not really a big rubber strap guy.
I don't really care for that rubber strap on that watch myself.
Yeah, and I think we were in a large department store locally here one day, and you saw it, and it was on sale. You're like, you should really get it. Now, guys, normally when my wife says you should buy that watch, there's zero hesitation. I immediately pull out the credit card and buy the watch, right? If I've got the go ahead, I buy the watch.
You're like,
I wasn't feeling it.
Oh, it's so 70s to me, and it made me, you needed to grow sideburns for that one.
So, yeah. So here's what changed it for me. If you guys are familiar with strapcode.com, they're a big online strap retailer and bracelet retailer.
Spell that for our listeners.
Strapcode, STRAPCODE. So they came out with, I want to call it the mill tap, but I think it's right on their website. It's called the Super J Lewis JUB 316L stainless steel watch bracelet for the Seiko Gold Turtle. Bottom line is it's an all gold plated stainless steel bracelet with the end links to match the turtle case. So it looks like a factory
It does.
bracelet, and it's kind of a Jubilee style.
It's
And
gold.
when I saw that, I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm just going full OG. So
Go big or go home.
The day they showed this new bracelet, I ordered it and I went on to the department store website and I ordered the watch. And so they both got here within a couple days. I've never worn this thing on the rubber strap. It immediately got the OG bracelet treatment, and so that's how I've worn it ever since. And it really is a lot of fun, and I get a lot of compliments on it although I don't post on Instagram very often anymore, but when I did post it, I was getting a lot of comments and a lot of favorable feedback on it. it's just fun. I mean, it kind of sends you back to the all gold 70s and 80s, right? It's big and bold, and it's got the 4R36 movement, so that's the day date as opposed to just the date. It's got lots of great loom on it. I mean, it's your typical great Seiko Prospex diver. It sub $500.
It matches my small all yellow gold Seiko 5 ladies, little 29 millimeter.
Yep. So that's my wrist check today, and it's just I think I've probably done a wrist check with this one before. I've never done a what's in the collection with it, but
excuse me, still a little smoke.
So if you just want to go full on over gold and take a trip back to the 70s, buy the SRPC 44 and the 22 millimeter Super J Louis JUB strap, and I'll put a link on the website for this podcast post. But just a lot of fun. It's really cool, and the bracelet's so it's that Jubilee, so it's so comfortable. Just hugs the wrist, really soft.
And how is the metal feel? Does it feel like toy metal?
No, it's very high quality. It's it's $150 bracelet. So I had to get the watch on sale, or I wasn't going to do this, and I got a huge discount, like a 40 or 50% discount when I bought the watch. So that allowed me to buy the bracelet and not be completely over the top on cost. But it's very, very high quality. It's a double locking push button clasp with a bunch of micro adjusts on it. Very, very high quality, solid links. Doesn't snag my hair at all.
It's heavy.
It's very heavy. Yeah, it's a very, very high quality bracelet.
Excellent. Yeah. I like it. I love it.
Fun stuff. So that's my wrist check. Let's get into what's in the collection.
All right. Since we just talked about Oris, and we just talked about gold.
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 I love gold.
Mine is actually a vintage piece here. It's all yellow gold. Again, it's an Oris, but this is actually a pendant. And I've posted some of my pendants before. This is another ladybug or cicada pendant, and it's probably, I would say, late 70s, right before quartz crisis, because I remember women wearing these when I was like in high school. And the wings open up, and it's got a tiny little I should have measured them. I had the movement out of another one. I actually have two of these. One's a Lucerne,
so cool.
Lucerne brand, and the other is the other two are Oris. I bought the Lucerne for parts, but they're different movements, so I don't know why I was thinking that would work. But this is about 27. The case is about 27, so it's a small movement. But I popped it out of here earlier, and it said 7 jewels on the movement, and it is an Oris movement.
It looks brand new.
Yeah, unfortunately, this one doesn't run. I think this spring.
Oh, this is not the red one. Okay.
No, the red one. The red one is actually in really good shape and runs
that's the one I was thinking.
Keeps pretty good time. And the red one actually has a second subdial on that tiny little watch. This does not, but it's got some fantastic font 12369 in that old school minimalist sort of feel. That's why I think this one's a little older. So at some point, when I feel like spending some money on getting a watch renovated, I'll send this one in. But these some of the ones that are in tip top shape are going for several $100s. This one I think I paid $40 for, or $35.
Was that on eBay?
Yeah, eBay. But even as jewelry, it's really cute. So someday I'd like to get this one running. The movements do pop in and out though. It's pretty standard because this case has a patent. All the cases are Swiss. I think all the ones I have are Swiss made. So they're super fun. And I know pendant watches and vintage stuff isn't quite as like hot and popular as some of the newer watches that people are following. But I just like the history of this, thinking somebody wore this, back in the day. And I have some vintage watches that are 100 years old, like my Longines trench watch that I think we did on one of the other in the collection. If not, we'll do it next time. But that's my first one. This one's all yellow gold, and it's a ladybug, and it's awfully cute, and it's special to me because I remember seeing them back in the day and wishing I could get one, but of course it was way out of my budget as a high school kid.
What I will say, guys, is if you've been trying to get your girlfriend or wife, spouse into watches and it's not going well, find one of these in good condition because it's jewelry, right? I mean, you put it on a chain.
That's cute.
And it's a novelty, right? Because it's got a mechanical movement in it. It's a nice little piece of jewelry that looks like a ladybug, but you hit the button and the wings open up and you got the time. And it's, especially if you have a wife that's, maybe she wears a Apple Watch or something, right? So it's hard to get that off of her wrist and a real watch on her wrist. I know some of you will take offense to that, but I don't consider the Apple Watch a real watch. If it's hard to get that Apple Watch off of her wrist, you give her this on a chain. It's
a bauble.
Yeah, and then you can start educating her on the mechanics of what's inside and how it works. She'll have to wind it, and it's just I think it's a great way to get your significant other into watches, where otherwise you may not be able to get her into watches. So we'll have pictures of it and some info on where you might be able to find them. But I think it's a really neat piece.
Speaking of learning about quartz watches or Apple Watches versus mechanical, you read me the most hysterical review on a watch on the internet, and
I will read that.
I heard you laughing from across the house.
Yeah, so that's part of one of the watches I'm going to talk about.
Okay,
no, that's okay.
Okay, we're on the same page.
We'll get there. We are on the same page.
We're definitely on the same page.
Yeah. But that's not the first one I'm going to go over. So if you're done, I'll move on to my first one.
I'm going to have a sip of water to wash the smoke down from outside.
And I just realized that I'm pretty much, it's a almost all Seiko day for me today, and my wrist check as well as my 3. Oh. So the first one is one I've talked about a lot on the podcast, but I've never done it in one of the What's in the Collection episodes. By the way, I think this is our 4th time we've done this, but anyway.
5th? 4th.
I think this is the 4th What's in the Collection. I have to go back and look. This was my wrist check last week. So this is the Grand Seiko SBGA 387 Kurizuri dial. And there's a reason why this one means a lot to me. So back in 2018, there was some significant announcements from Grand Seiko. The biggest of which was that they were establishing a completely standalone independent U.S. brand. So when they did that, they did a special limited edition release of 3 watches U.S. only. And what was really cool for us is when we were covering the Couture Time watch show in Las Vegas in 2018, we were one of the first folks in the United States to actually see these watches and actually get to touch them and handle them.
And they were prototypes only.
Yeah, these were just the prototypes, but it was a run of 3 different watches, all spring drive. They had a platinum one with kind of a white dial, and it was like $50,000 or something crazy. Beautiful watch. I think they made 20 of them. Then they had a rose gold cased one with a kind of a cream dial, and they made 50 of those, and that was like $30,000. And then they had this one. Personally, this was my favorite out of the 3 from a visual point of view, because it's got this absolutely gorgeous blue dial. They're all the Kurizuri treatment, which almost, if you look up close, it almost looks like kind of crumpled up rice paper. And this just has this absolutely gorgeous blue color to it, especially when the sun hits it in the right way. And it's just the way the sun bounces off this dial is absolutely amazing. They all have that same treatment, but this was the only blue dial.
And the only one that had a bracelet.
Yes, and so this came with a bracelet and also came with a black and a dark blue patent leather strap, which I'm not a big patent leather guy, so I don't wear it with those.
It doesn't go good with muck boots.
No, this watch, I don't wear this watch a ton, only because it's...
I was making a joke.
Yeah, it's kind of like we refer to the Cartier Santos that we have, where if you breathe on it, the bezel scratches. This one scratches really easily, but it's got all the beautiful polishing that Grand Seiko's known for. They made 558 of them. I bought one, and I got it from Rob Kaplan at Topper, who we had on the show last week, and he bought one too. So that's why I think last week I said we were watch brothers, because we both have this one. But such a beautiful watch. It's got a display case back, so you get to see how the spring drive movement works, which is so much different than a regular mechanical movement that ticks back and forth, with the escape wheel, whereas this has a wheel that's just constantly moving in one direction, speeding up and slowing down to keep time. And I'm not going to go over, we've had a lot of requests from people to have an episode on spring drive, and I think we'll probably still do that. But the biggest thing to know about spring drive is it's a combination of mechanical and quartz. So the timekeeping is regulated by a quartz crystal, but the whole movement's mechanical. So it still has to be wound. It's still got a mainspring. So it's still powered as a normal automatic watch.
Right, with no battery.
But the timekeeping is via a quartz crystal and a little mechanism in there. So really groundbreaking technology that they first came out with, I think, in the 70s is when it was developed. Absolutely gorgeous movement. The only thing I wish they hadn't done on this, and they did it because it was one of these special edition watches, it's got the display back, but then they've got the Grand Seiko, I think it's the lion logo on the back, and it blocks a lot of the movement. You see that? How they put it right on the sapphire crystal. Yeah. So it kind of blocks some of the movement. You can still see the wheel on the top.
Just depends on the angle you look.
Yeah.
Right.
I kind of wish they hadn't put that on there because the movement is such a sight to behold. I mean, such a pretty movement. And it's got a really nice metal bracelet, like an H-link bracelet. I think it's a 5-link. And it does have a butterfly clasp, which is normally I'm not a big fan of those because they're hard to get the right fit. But they do have, it comes with multiple size links, so you still can get the perfect fit with this watch. And
it's not a butterfly; it's a deployant.
Well, it's deployant, but it's not.
It's only one.
You're right. It's not the typical butterfly, but it's a much smaller clasp, and I do like that because then you don't have all that clasp underneath.
It's almost integrated like a Rolex.
But like a butterfly, there's no micro adjust. The way you adjust it to get the right fit is by using the different size links that it comes with. So, in any case, this is such a special watch. This is one I'll never part with. It
was such a great experience at the Grand Seiko.
It was,
salon at the show because everyone was so kind and welcoming. We got to meet Nakazawa-san. That was like
one of their
probably one of the highlights of my life was that whole experience. It truly was. So to see that pre-production prototype and hold it, and then you actually were able to get the watch it's a really cool history for you personally, for both of us.
It really is. And to own one of these movements, I mean, that was something that was really on our wish list. It was to eventually own a spring drive, a Grand Seiko spring drive.
They had a ladies Grand Seiko that debuted as well, and I got to hold the prototype with the rose gold and diamonds, and it was so dressy and stunning. But let me tell you the price on that. Do you remember exactly? I think it was 35,000.
I think it was more than that. I think it was up.
It was under 40. No, it was under
just
40.
Under 40.
But oh my goodness! But
it's beautiful.
I'm not a rose gold person because I don't wear any
and
rose gold.
It's like an evening gown.
It was,
watch,
but it
right?
was stunning. It was so. The band was like a dark brown, like a burgundy brown, and the rose, and the dial was almost a pearl white, and just stunning.
It was gorgeous. Yeah, it was. Yeah. They had a lot of beautiful watches that year, but
I would be a little nervous wearing something like that.
Yeah, and I don't think the geese would appreciate it very much, since we're not really around human beings anymore.
But it is sparkly, and they would be trying to nibble.
They would be trying to eat it, and swallow it. But all right, well, that's my first. What's your next one?
My next one. Okay, we've got a little bit of a theme. Mine's a Seiko cocktail time. It's the ladies' size, so it is exactly. I want to say 34. Exact. It's just under 34, I believe. And this is the Cure Royale red dial that. We got the press release from our Grand Seiko contact from the Cure time. Yeah. And I was like, how do I get this?
And you found it.
And we finally found it. So it's the dial is beautiful, and the bracelet that comes with it is actually the same bracelet that comes on the men's size version of the Cocktail Times. And actually the movement is the same movement. which is another topic that we just talked about with in-house, where you talk about what movement goes in which size watches. So
it should be the 4R35.
Yeah.
Is it a date only?
I'm trying to pull up my
I think
data.
it's just the date only, which would be the 4R35.
It is, yeah. So it's got an exhibition case back. Really nice looking movement. It's got a sort of a skeletonized rotor, but it's the same movement that's in yours. So I really like that they do that. So they're not making it a quartz and making it smaller, which was it episode 2, like almost 3 years ago, that I said we want, female collectors want the same watches that
it was our first
men
episode
have.
ever in 2018.
We don't want
April
to stick a bunch of diamonds on it.
Yep.
Just give us the same watch, but a little bit smaller.
Yep.
Which has kind of been my mantra for almost 3 years now. So
yeah.
It's something that's been, it was the reason for the birth of the podcast.
Yep.
So since it's a dress watch, I like that it's smaller.
Well, the cool thing is, it's when you first started talking about those types of things a few years ago, it inspired a lot of other female collectors on Instagram to come out and start sharing their collections and saying, yeah, we don't necessarily want the pink and the diamonds and stuff with a quartz. I appreciate the mechanical movement. And so that we've seen a lot more female collectors since we started the show that have really gotten into it. And it's awesome to see that it's kind of inspired that. And we've heard from a lot of women who've reached right out and said, thank you so much. You've inspired me to really get into this and start talking more about what I want as a collector. And it's awesome.
I mean, there's absolutely the right place for a women's diamond or pink watch. I have watches that are like my Bulova that I believe it was on in the collection. It's the Swarovski crystal.
And
Bulova
you did that
dress
in one
watch.
of the early what's in the collection.
That is a New Year's Eve watch. It's so sparkly. It's completely paved crystals. And I absolutely love that watch. And that is something that I think every female collector should have in their collection, is the little black dress party watch, when you're going to be out on New Year's Eve. So I do have quite a few watches that are ladies' quartzes that are dainty. But as a collector, when you're starting to build a large collection, you want the same thing. You want a dive watch that's appropriate size. And a lot of women can pull off a men's size watch, but other times I think it's forced, and it's more like, darn it, I'm going to wear that men's watch, regardless of how it looks. Yeah. But when the lugs start hanging over, it's it is whatever you want to do. I mean, there's no rules.
We're not going to tell you what to do.
Sometimes people have rules about certain things about watches, but there aren't any rules. But I think in general, you can appreciate the design of a watch when it's sized appropriately.
What I've always said is that to me, that always kind of looks like the little
kid.
8-year-old who takes dad's watch off of his dresser and puts it on and to play dress up. And that's what it looks like to me. No offense to anyone who wants to wear a gigantic watch that hangs way over your wrist. If that's your thing, that's your thing. And sometimes there's no choice. If you want a specific watch, it's only made in larger sizes. And that's the whole thing that we've been talking about is, come on, guys, make these in smaller sizes, not just for women, but for men that have smaller wrists too.
Unfortunately, I think we are we are still a small segment.
Yes. Yeah.
For marketing.
Well, women are, but not necessarily male watch collectors.
Right. Like our two friends in our Red Bar group, those two fellas, we sit off in a corner and the three of us try on each other's watches because we have identical 6 1/4.
It's the small wrist group in the corner.
we all have 6 1/4 inch circumference wrists. So it's a lot of fun. It's like, oh, what'd you bring? Yeah. So I think that's about it for that one. But one other thing I want to say about these cocktail times is that I did have at least 2 or 3 men DM me about this because they wanted the smaller size because they're the kind of petite guys. There are new ones out that the colors are stunning, and they're based on the famous Tokyo bar and the drinks that are made there by the famous bartender. So each one has a little backstory, but in my stories on my Instagram account, I actually posted photos of the 3 recent ones. And I'm not a pink person, but there's a stainless one with a pink dial that looks like cotton candy to me. And I think that's the Cosmopolitan. So super, super duper fun. Okay. All right. I'll stop talking.
Well, so yours leads perfectly into mine because these were kind of his and hers. So my next one is, again, it's a Seiko.
I bought it for you for your birthday.
Yeah, this was a gift from PG a couple years ago for my birthday. This is the SRPB 43 Presage, 40 millimeter, I believe. It's that 4R35 movement. Okay, you're going to hand me the calibers. All right, I guess I have to be accurate here. So let's do a quick measure. I'm almost positive it's a 40, and yes, it's a 40 millimeter. This was a gift. It's got this beautiful, it's a really super light blue dial, and in a lot of light it looks silver, but if you get in the right light, you can see the blue that comes out. Beautiful sunburst pattern on the dial. Now, what's special about this watch, I chose it for a couple of reasons. Number one, because you had chosen your cocktail time. Mm-hmm. Number two, because the watch I just previously talked about, the Grand Seiko, if you love the Grand Seiko, but don't have the money, don't have Grand Seiko money, but want something that looks like it, I mean, look at these. They are so alike. They're both 40 millimeter cases. They both have beautiful Seiko light blue dials. They both have, now this comes with patent leather with blue stitching. I immediately ordered, because you can buy other Presage watches with the same case that come with a factory stainless steel bracelet. Mm-hmm. So I bought the stainless steel bracelet separately. Very comfortable. And actually, you had corrected me because I mentioned that I said the Grand Seiko had a butterfly clasp. I was thinking about this watch. So this watch actually does have a butterfly.
Yeah. Same bracelet as on my smaller cocktail time. Same pattern, links, everything. It's
and the same concept.
His and her kind of thing.
Yeah, you've got no micro adjust, but you have different size links to get the right fit. So
they're very tricky. That's the post. It's the post and sleeve. On mine, and oh my gosh, they're
not the easiest to adjust, but so this watch really reminds me. I had this one before I got the Grand Seiko. Obviously, you don't get a spring drive movement, right? You get a nice solid Seiko 4R35 movement, display case back, nice gold rotor. You know, it's
pretty
nicely decorated. It's nothing crazy fancy, but if you like to look at the movement, it's got that display case back. But you know, point being is you can pick this up for less than $400, sometimes less than $300 on sale, and then buy the bracelet. I think the bracelet was another $50 or $60, something like that. And
then you've got
for under $500, you have something that looks very, very similar to the Grand Seiko, because I don't care if it's a base Seiko or a high-end Grand Seiko. Seiko just knows how to do dials. I mean, they have some of the best dials in the industry. So if you're looking for something similar to the Grand Seiko, the SRPB 43, great watch that you can get with, buy the factory bracelet for it. And I'll see if I can find the part number. It's been a while, but it's fantastic. So we'll again post pictures and some links, but fantastic watch. And it's another great one of those his and her combos that we wear sometimes, and that's a lot of fun. So if you guys are both into collecting, these last two we talked about.
Or if one person has a super small wrist and the other doesn't, it's a kind of a fun matchy.
Yep. Oh, and I do need to read. I need to read one of this review. Yeah. So on the Seiko USA website for this watch, there's a review on there.
No names.
No, I won't read any. And you can go. It's right there on their website. But they gave the watch 1 star out of 5. And the review, here's the review. Quote, "Beautiful watch. A present from my wife, Christmas 2018. If I don't wear it every day, it will run down in approximately 24 hours. The store where purchased has not responded. Based on my other Seikos, this is merely defective." So his other Seikos are obviously quartz, right? I mean, and the thing is, I had to read that because I laughed, and I heard this story from a lot of dealers, right, where they get people coming in who bought a watch and are so upset that it's not running anymore, and they have to explain to them, look, this doesn't have a battery. It's a mechanical automatic watch. If you don't wear it, it stops working. You have to wind it, get it right. So I had to I had to read that. I thought it was kind of funny. Definitely made me laugh.
Well, I don't know if it's as funny as the story we told before about when you were at a conference and a very young person came up and asked you what time it was.
Oh, and I just flipped my wrist and showed her my wrist with my, normal analog watch on, and she goes, "What am I supposed to do with that?" or something to that effect. And she did not know how to tell time. I mean, she was, I don't know, late teens, early 20s, probably an intern or something at the company I work for. And so I proceeded to stand there for about 10 minutes to try to teach this girl how to tell time. How did she get through life? I mean, even at that age, we still have clocks on the walls, but I guess if you've got your phone, you were born with a phone in your hand.
It's a little disturbing. You don't need to
tell time, but it was definitely a little disturbing. So
more reason to gift watches to people so that they can appreciate the technology.
Exactly.
And it is a technology. It's a fascinating piece of engineering.
Yep. All right.
How are we doing on time?
We're up there. So, but we only got one more each, so we're fine.
All right. So my last one is one of the brands we really like, Mr. Jones watches in London, and they've featured us on their blog before as a podcast, that was so much fun, and we're really grateful.
They featured a lot of your photos too. You've gotten some discounts from them because of your photos.
I actually won a monthly. I'm not sure if they're doing it anymore. They're pretty busy with COVID, and they just announced they're moving their factory, their assembly area. But I won a couple contests and I got a little gift card. So I've used those towards purchasing. We have several of their watches now. And this one is another matching set that we both have. This is the Queen of Hearts, and it's 37 millimeters, and it's got the Queen of Hearts from a deck of cards, and it's a mechanical movement. I think it's a jumping hour, Chinese-made movement.
Yeah, it's a Seagull.
And it's in a series. There's the King, and then there's the Queen, and some of their watches come in different sizes. Like your King is the XL.
Oh, you just blew my last.
I didn't say anything. I just said that the one you own.
Well, we'll do it together then as our last What's in the Collection. So good. Mine is the King, right?
Because you're the King and I'm the Queen.
That's right. So I've got the same
2020
watch,
can't be over soon enough. So
they're awesome.
That was a special gift I got you for our anniversary.
Yes.
And I love the bezel on yours. Mine is the standard unisex size, 37. That's the XL, and it's got a fantastic chunky round.
It's a monster. It's 44 millimeters. It's a big watch.
Yeah, it's really, really pretty. Well, these are jumping hour, and the way you tell time is the center of the Queen. Her heart has the hour, and then there are playing cards that go around. So it's every 10 minutes it shows a different series of cards.
Yeah, between like 10 and 11. It took me a while. It took me a while to figure out how to read this.
Yeah, it takes a little getting used to because it's very, very different. But once you get used to it, it's pretty easy.
Yeah, so you've got your hour in the center, which it's down there a few layers, so it can be a little bit tough to see. And then you got your playing cards. So on the hour, you've just got one ace. And then at, 10 after? At 10 after, you've got the 10 of clubs with a card underneath and slightly below it to the left. And let's see, then you've got 3 10s, or no, you got, what's 20 after? 20 after is a 2 and an ace. 3 10s for half hour, and then you've got a 4 and an ace, a 5 and an ace for 40 and 50 hour, and then back to your ace when it flips. So yeah, these are really fun watches.
Yeah, they really are. And the neat thing is that you can change your bracelets to straps. And I believe the Queen shipped on the Milanese, which it's a fantastic strap. It's really useful on other watches as well. But I actually went in right at the beginning of pandemic and I purchased the leather black. It's a 2-color. The top part with the buckle is black with white stitching, and the bottom is red with white stitching. So it really looks fantastic with the queen. It's a lot of fun. And these are just great watches to wear, like if we have a casino night at home, or if we ever get to go to Reno again.
We will someday.
I really miss Reno.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and it just really looks handsome on you too, the king one. They're
well,
great.
and mine has, both black top and black tail. So this is all black with white stitching. But, the thing with Mr. Jones is what I really enjoy about them is having to explain how they work. And especially with this guy with the cards, this is the most difficult, I think, of everything that we have in terms of not difficult. It's just a new way of reading time.
It's legible. It's one of the more legible numbers.
It is. Yeah. And the thing is, people notice these, right? They're very bold. They stand out on your wrist. So then when you have to explain to them how it tells time, I almost feel like I've got one up on someone. Like I have this secret way of telling time, right? I've got this information that nobody has, and I'm imparting this information to you. It's kind of fun to have this little, because I can look at it and I know what time it is. If someone else were to look at it, they wouldn't have a clue until you explain it to them. Right. So it's kind of fun, It's a fun little novelty, I guess. But when you also explain to them that there's no battery, right? It's a full mechanical movement. Mm-hmm. It's all gears and springs. Then that's when they really get the aha moment. Like, this is really something special. It's amazing that you've got this thing on your wrist with a bunch of gears and springs in it that tells time in this fashion. It's just really fun. And
these aren't, they're not going to hurt your wallet either. These are, they're art watches. They're very unique. The queen, the retail price for that is $275. I forgot what the king was, but still,
probably
it's
a little, maybe like
just a little bit more,
or $350.
But take a look at their stuff. I mean, they have so many styles that they would make excellent gifts for someone who
really
has,
fun.
A unique hobby or something. But really, really fun.
Again, I think that's another good way to get someone into watches who may not really be into watches. Get them something that's really fascinating to look at and is a new way of telling time that they have to kind of teach themselves. I think it's a good way to do it.
Yep. They also have quite a few quartz pieces that cost less. So if that's better on your budget, take a look. But really, really fun. They put a smile on your face, and some are more playful than others. So just take a quick look and see what tickles your fancy. Yeah, they're fun.
Yep. Well, we're at almost an hour and 20 minutes, so we should probably wrap this one. So normally the website post comes up a day or two after it hits iTunes and the rest of the podcast players. So you may have to give it a day or two to be able to actually see the photos, but I will post a bunch of photos. We'll get as many links as we can for all the stuff we've talked about today. And as usual, thank you so much for listening and taking the time to listen to the podcast and give us your feedback. As I always ask, if you have a few minutes, get onto iTunes. We read one today. We're going to start being better about that. And if you give us a review on iTunes and we do read it on the air, you're going to get some free swag. So again, I think it was JD something.
JD.
Reach out to us either on Instagram or by email, and we'll get you something
and the
fun.
Watchdog podcast, fellow podcaster.
Oh, right.
Very nice fellow. Check out his podcast.
Yeah. So I think that's it.
It is.
Yeah.
And
guys,
it's been a pleasure.
We hope you enjoyed the episode. Again, these episodes always seem to get a lot of listens and a lot of likes. So hope you enjoyed it. If you have other ideas, things you'd like to hear about, whether
or questions, DM us.
Yeah, reach out to us and let us know. And we'll see you next time. Yeah?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, guys.
Take care,
Have
everybody.
a good one, and we'll see you on the next show. Later.
Bye-bye.